For GED Social Studies, you may have to see which graphs here relate to a topic that they give you, like globalization. But no worries, because they're going to explain exactly what that is. Then we can see which graphs are related to it. Let's read it. Globalization refers to the increasing connection of countries through trade, technology, transportation, and communication. Let's go ahead and highlight these. So if we see any of these four within the graph, we know it does have to do with globalization. But the question is, which graph here does not relate to the concept of globalization? Okay, well, let's just go one by one. Let's see which ones do. The first one, just read the title, Global Shipping Container Traffic. If we're looking at global shipping or containers delivering things, that definitely has to do with trade. Therefore, it does have to do with globalization here. We want one that doesn't deal with any of these guys. Okay, the next one. Global rainfall by region. That's what this map is showing. But rainfall, that's not trade, technology, transportation, or communication. So this definitely seems like the one that doesn't relate to globalization. Okay, well, let's just make sure. We'll go ahead and read the rest. Smartphone ownership by region. So people owning smartphones. But smartphone ownership, well, that has to do with technology and communication. We'll go ahead and highlight those. So this graph definitely shows globalization going on. In other words, the connection between people in different countries. Okay, what about the last? International air travelers. So people taking airplanes into different countries. This one, that definitely sounds like transportation, right? So that one matches globalization as well. But the only one that didn't was B. So rainfall, that doesn't have to do with any of the things they mentioned here. So that one does not pertain to globalization, or it does not relate to that concept there. So as you can see, by finding which things do match this definition of globalization, then it's easy to find the one that doesn't have to do with it. So that's all there. Okay, what's another style that they could give you? You may have to create a bar graph by dragging these guys over. We're going to click and drag each of these ones to the correct category. But once again, they explain everything in the little paragraph they give you. Let's read it. In 2024, the U.S. Army had about 450,000 active duty personnel. All right, we've got the Army, we've got how many people are in it, and the first category is the Army. Now, we want to find 450,000, but the graph is already in thousands, so we just need to find 450. Well, that's going to be in between 4 and 500, so somewhere about here. And that's going to be pretty tall, so let's go ahead and use the biggest bar over here. We'll go ahead and click that, drag it over, and let's see. That hits right in between. Definitely looks like it could be 450, so we're good to go there. Okay, the next category, the Marines. Let's see how many people are in that. Well, they mention it at the end. The Marine Corps had approximately 170,000 personnel. Highlight that there. Now, 170, we know that's going to be in between these two, so pretty low on the graph. Let's go ahead and drag over this one. That one looks pretty small. But if we do that, we see, oh, wait a minute, this one's under 100, when in reality it should be close to 170. So it's not the smallest one. So let's grab the next smallest one right there. And that'll do it. Because this is under 200, and going across, that definitely seems like 170 there. Okay, great. So far, so good. What about the Air Force? Let's go ahead and keep going. That one they mentioned, that's 320,000. But before we grab one of these, let's just pause. Eventually, we'll need the Navy as well. And they mentioned that the Navy has 335. Both of these are really close, but this one, it's a little bit smaller. Let's go ahead and choose the graph that's a little bit smaller for the Air Force there. Go ahead and put that. And as we can see, it's above 300, so 320 seems pretty reasonable there. But finally, the last one, the Navy, we know that that one's just got a smidge more. The Navy has 335. So let's see if that graph is bigger. And it is. So this is 335, this is 320. So just take your time, especially with values that are close to each other. You'll be good for making any bar graph here. This time we're given a graph with a bunch of lines. These represent US jobs by industry. How many millions of people have these 4 different jobs here? Let's go ahead and read it. According to the trends in the graph, which industry will most likely employ the most workers by 2030? Okay, so which of these 4 industries will employ the most workers by 2030? But the graph ends in 2020 here, so if you want to keep going, just extend all the lines in the direction they're already headed. For instance, the red one here, it looks to be flattening out. So jobs in hospitality seem to be leveling off there. Let's just keep drawing that line just the way it was. And then same thing with the purple one with healthcare. That one's just a straight line. We're going to continue drawing it in the same way. So if we do that, it's going to look like this. Okay, now let's see. We went from 2015 to 2020. That was 5 years right here. Then we went another 5 years. So this is 2025. And already in 2025, it looks like the purple graph is starting to get bigger. In other words, more people are working in healthcare than in hospitality. In other words, the most workers by 2030, if we keep going here, is the purple graph, or people working in healthcare. So D, we're very confident that this is the correct graph, based on the trends that they're giving us here. Okay, let's check out another one. This time, the graph is US presidential election voter turnout. Basically, how many people voted in a certain presidential election. They tell us US presidential elections occur every 4 years. The question, approximately how many million people voted in the 2016 US presidential election? Now, the only problem is 2016. They give us 2020 over here, but we've got to find 2016 on the graph. Now, this one, if we go straight up, there was an election in 2020. So if they occur every 4 years, there must have been one 4 years before this. So going back, this had to be 2016 because that's 4 years before 2020. So therefore right here, let's go ahead and label that. Another way to do it is you could just go by 4s, right? There's an election in 2000, 2004, 8, 12, 16. So either way we look at it, this one is the 2016 election. Okay, but again, we want to find how many million people voted. Just go straight up and straight across. And going straight across, we get 140, but that represents how many millions of people voted. So, how many million people voted? It's just 140. Therefore, just type that in the box right there, and we're done. So sometimes the hard part is figuring out the values in between the ones that they give you. But you could do it a couple different ways, and we found what we were looking for. Alrighty, let's just do one last one. This time, which bar graph represents the information given? You can see the pattern here. They're often just giving you the information in the paragraph, so we'll go ahead and just read that there. In 1937, the number of factories participating in labor protests by state included Michigan with 39 factories, Ohio 43, and so on all the way down to Pennsylvania. Again, which bar graph represents this information? Well, let's start with the biggest value here. That's usually the best way to do it. Pennsylvania's 96. That's more than any of the other ones. So the bar graph should be the biggest for Pennsylvania. Now, if we look at the first graph, it looks like, hey, that's the last one listed here. This is looking pretty good. Looks to be almost 96. But the problem is, that's for Indiana. So we got to make sure they're actually labeling it correctly. Pennsylvania does not have the most for the first one, so that's not correct there. Okay, what about the others? This one here, C, Pennsylvania's got the most. That looks like 96, that's good. Same with B, Pennsylvania the most again. But then D, that one for Pennsylvania is not the biggest, so we know that one's not right. Okay, next let's find the smallest value. 21 is the smallest out of all of these, and that represents Indiana. Let's make sure that this is the smallest bar graph for Indiana. For C, this one here, it's just less than 25. That is the smallest out of all of them, and that definitely could be 21 there. So C, that's looking good. What about B? Indiana, that's the smallest. Again, less than 25, so that one's looking good as well. Okay, we didn't eliminate anything. Let's go ahead and go to the next biggest value besides 96, and that would be 58 for Illinois. Let's see if this is the second biggest value. For this graph here, there's Illinois, and that one is the second biggest. It's also over 50, which is what we want as well. So this one's looking good. But looking at option B, we find Illinois. That's not the second biggest, and it's less than 50, when we know that that should represent 58. But the one that did it correctly was option C. Therefore, C, this is the correct bar graph that represents this data. A bunch of people unsatisfied with their work. Sounds about right. Now, you may not get a ton of these, but check out this video on 3 branches of government. These are questions that could show up a little bit more frequently on the social studies test. Check out my website for practice problems on these ones and other topics as well. Let me know what questions you have, what else you want me to cover. Good luck, you got these. We'll see you in the next video. Toodles.